Alright guys, thank you so much for joining me in learning Ruby on Rails. Now a couple notes to get started. First of all, this is a course that is on my Udemy page that I uploaded over a year ago, so you'll notice that my voice is going to be a lot higher in the actual lectures. And if you want to see the full course, which is going to have just a little bit more information and also a Q&A forum and stuff, click the link down below and you'll be able to sign up for free. No money, no contract or anything. In this video, we're going to be going over the basic framework of how Rails works, and we're also going to create a very simple Rails app, which is basically just going to be implementing Ruby into a web page, and then after that, we're going to be working a little bit with Git. And so without further ado, let's get started with installing Rails.
So one of the more trickier yet essential things that we have when learning Ruby on Rails is actually installing Ruby on Rails on our machine. And luckily it's a one and done type of thing, but it's still very complicated and very different depending on which operating system you have. So the one resource that I recommend for you to learn how to install Rails on your device is installrails.com. That's installrails.com. And this right here, you say start now. And it has your different operating systems. So I'm going to choose Linux for this example. And it gives you links to a Rails guide. So for instance, this gives me a link to Rails Girls, which teaches me how to set up for Linux. And it has a bunch of cool resources for that. So yeah, hopefully you will be able to install Rails without any problems. So we can actually get coding and go to installrails.com. And I will see you in the next video, sweet, where we can actually start working with Ruby on Rails. Alright guys, so in this video we will be talking about MVC, or Model Viewer Controller. That's what it stands for. So what is MVC? And MVC is basically a way for us to organize our application code to make it very efficient. So MVC is Model Viewer Controller. And it's basically in pretty much every framework, including Rails, Django, etc. So first let's talk about the M, and the M stands for model. And basically what the model does is it connects the database to our application. So it's going to show associations, it's going to connect little things like a user will have posts, and a post will have a user, that type of stuff. And it's kind of like a translator to our application. So next is the V, or the view, and the view is basically what the user is going to see through their browser. So it takes the data from the controller and the model and it shows it in usually HTML. So it handles the styling and yeah. Last is the controller, and the controller is kind of like a police officer. It regulates the application so that not just anybody can do whatever, you know. It also will help us in creating, showing, editing stuff, and a lot of other stuff. So just to recap, we have a little diagram again. So we have the model, which takes from the DB and the controller, and then shows it to the user. The user then writes to the controller, which stores it in the model, which stores it in the database, and then brings it back to the user through the view. So yeah, that's pretty much it guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright guys, in this video we will be working with rendering and with partials. And so just to sort of give you a sense what we'll be doing, I have one of the example apps that we will be building in this course. And I'll go into views. And views, basically what it does is it shows our application. So in these other folders like the controllers and the models, that tells our application what to do, but the views actually shows it. It's the V part of MVC. So if I go to layouts application.html.erb, the thing that's cool about this is that this code is displayed on every single page in our views. It's displayed on the edit.html.erb index, everything. And it's all put inside the yield tag that you will see at the bottom there. So this is why we have our JavaScript and our CSS style sheets linked there. So that's pretty much application.html.erb. If we go into items, you see that there's an underscore form.html.erb. Now, why do you think that we have an underscore there and it's not just form.html.erb? Well, that is because it is a partial. So you see we have all of the form code right here. And basically this code is being copied off, and it's very easy to do that. So for instance, if we go to new.html.erb, it just says render form right there, which is rendering the code in the underscore form.html.erb. And it's the same thing with the edit too. So that's really cool. So all of that code, you can edit it there, and then it'll be edited on the new and the edit action for us, and we don't have to do anything. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much that for you, and I'll see you in the next one. So we know about MVC, but how is it actually used in our application? And all the MVC stuff is basically in our apps folder of our application. So I have our application open, and I'm going to go into app. And you see we have a controllers folder, a models folder, and a views folder, which is perfect. So I'll open all three of those folders up so you can see them better. So first I'm going to be talking about the controllers, and you see we have an application controller and an items controller. And then inside the views we have items with all the item views and layouts, which goes on every single view. So up in item.rb you see the database doesn't really have to do anything, but we could say something like belongs to a user if we wanted to associate an item with a user. But we don't, so I'm just going to revert it back. Alright, similarly, if we go to the items controller, you see it says the index is all the items. We also have how to create a new item, how to update an item, destroy an item, all that stuff, which gets rendered in the views, which is in html.erb. So yeah, you see if we go to index, we have a items.eachDo, and it's saying items equals item.all to show all of the items. And then in here, it's just displaying that data in the items view from the items controller index action. So yeah, guys, it's pretty much MVC for you, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so in this video we will be talking about migrations. And what are migrations? Migrations are a way for us to create tables in our database so that we can actually store data with our application, like users, posts, etc. So in order to do that, we'll have our application open, and we go to DB where all of the database info is stored. So let me just open up DB. Then we go to migrate, and that's where all of our migrations will be. And you'll see you have a bunch of numbers, which will be the date, and then the name of the migration. So right here, I just have an example migration called create items. And it's saying to create a table called items with a t.string being an item. So that's pretty nice. And you see it also says t.timestamps equals false. So if we open up our terminal, every time we create a migration, every time we edit a migration, we want to do rake db migrate. And usually this takes a little bit while to load, but you will see in a second that I actually have already run this migration, so nothing's going to happen. But if this were a new migration, then it would migrate it to the database. Now let's say we want to wipe our database because we edited a migration. In order to do that, we would say rake db reset. And so what this function right here is saying is it's deleting everything and then recreating it sort of as the migration tells us to. So yeah, that's pretty much migrations for us, and I will see you in the next video. Sweet! Alright guys, so in this video we will be talking about the Rails gem file. And if you're not familiar with the gem file, it's a way for us to put Ruby gems directly into our Rails application. And Ruby gems are just little additions to our application that are really cool. So here I have the gem file opened, and you see we have all the gems that we can use. So for instance, we have Coffee Rails, Uglifier, Sass Rails, SQLite 3, which is our database and all that stuff. Now let's say we want to add a gem to our project. So I would say gem, and then inside a string, I'll say devise, which is something that we'll be working with a lot throughout this course. And then I'd open up our terminal. So now that I have created a new gem, I say bundle install. So after every time that you change the gem file, you say bundle install just to sort of update it. And you see, there we go. Gem devise is in there. Now I'm going to delete that, save it, and do bundle install again to get it back just the way it was. And you see it says 12 gem dependencies are installed. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much the gem file for you, and I will see you in the next video. Sweet. Alright guys, so there were a few things that I wanted to teach before we started coding more complex applications and getting into really diving deep into Rails. And I thought, what better way to teach all of those things than to combine it in one video and actually create a Rails app. So in order to do that, I have our terminal open here, and I'm going to create a Rails app by saying Rails, new, and then the name of our app will be first app. There we go. Okay, good. So we are now done. So I'll clear out our terminal, and I will cd or change directory into our app. So first app. Good. So we're in there, and now I'm going to open up our app in my favorite text editor, which is Atom text editor. So I'll say Atom dot. And then once I load, I'll close out of this terminal because Atom text editor has a terminal built into it. Alright, so we have our app opened in Atom. I'm going to close out of this now, and we'll just open up the terminal on here. And once that loads, I'm going to put in Rails S, which will run the Rails server. So simply every time you want to view your application, you run the server with Rails S. Or you say Rails server, but I do Rails S because it is quicker. So Rails S, I'll enter that into there in our app directory. And you see our server has successfully launched. Great. So it's saying Rails 4.2.6 application starting in development on localhost :3000. So I'll open up Google Chrome and we'll do just that. We'll say localhost :3000 or port, and you see it says welcome aboard, you're writing Ruby on Rails. So sweet, we have a basic application generated. The only problem is that it doesn't do anything. So in order to change that, I'm going to go into Atom, close out of this, and we are going to generate a controller, a view, and we're not actually going to do a model because we won't be working with a database. So we're going to generate a controller and a view. And we can do that all in one command by saying Rails G controller, and then we will name our controller welcome. And our welcome controller will only have one action, which is going to be index, and that is just going to have some basic Ruby on Rails code in there, which will be really nice. Alright, so our controller is created. So I'll minimize this terminal, and you see now if we go into app controllers that now we have a welcome controller. Now in order to initialize the welcome controller with an index so that we can create an index page, we'll just say def index to create the index function, and that's all we need. Now if it were something more advanced, like we were actually working with the database, then we would have to put something in there, but we're not because it's just our first app. So I'll close out of that, and we'll also go into views, welcome, and you see welcome has already created a folder for us, but there isn't actually any files in there. So I'll create a new file in there, and we'll name it index.html.erb. So you might have understood this part, index.html, because you've worked with HTML before, but the .erb part probably threw you off. And what .erb basically is a way to run Ruby code with HTML simultaneously. So I'll enter that to create that file, and inside of here I'll just do a basic h1 tag and say, hi guys. Now you may have noticed that I haven't done hello world yet in here. I didn't put hello world up here, and that's because I want to pizzazz it up. Okay, so we are going to do our first hello world in Ruby on Rails, but we're going to pizzazz it. We're going to display it 100 times. Alright, so how am I going to do that? What I'm going to do is open up Rails tags. What are Rails tags? Rails tags are simply just two greater than and less than tags, and then two %signs, and then you have stuff inside of here, your Rails code. Now here's the problem, okay? This is good for loops and conditionals, but if we want to display something like a link or a string or something like a name, a user's name or something, then we have the same tags, except for there's an equal sign on the first tag like that. So I'll just delete this because that's not what we're going to be doing. And instead we're going to do in here, and we'll say 100 dot times do, and then I'll also go down and I'll put an end also in Rails tags. And then inside of here, let's put our code that we want it to run 100 times. So our code will be h2, and we will say, hello world, I am a Ruby developer. I really can't spell. Alright, so we'll save that. And one last thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that this will be rendered in the browser. And how do we do that? Well, we have to change the routes. So you may notice on some websites, you'll have /home, /users, /videos, that type of stuff. And that's basically what we're going to do now. So we'll go into config, then routes.rb. And basically what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to say root, which means it's going to be the default route. So like if you go to like a .com website, like let's say facebook.com, it goes right to there. It doesn't go to another page. That's because of routing. Or Twitter would be a better example. So we'll root, and then inside of here we'll open up a string, and all we have to do is choose the controller, which will be welcome, and then the action, which will be index. And we'll separate the two with a £sign or hashtag sign, whatever you call it. So basically when we go to localhost port 3000, it's going to render this. Now another thing that we could also do is we could say get, and then open up a string, so we'll say /test, and then we will set that equal to something else like welcome hashtag index, and that would work too, but we want it to also route to our application. So we've saved everything, so I'm going to open up our terminal, and we'll say Rails S to run the Rails server. Okay, the server is running. Let's see if our code actually worked. So I'll open up Google Chrome, reload localhost port 3000 or :3000. And it should take a while the first time. But you see it says, hi guys, hello world, I am a Ruby developer 100 times. And it'll do the same thing if we go to /test. So I'll do the same thing. So /test. And it says the exact same thing. It renders the exact same thing. So congratulations, you created your first Ruby app. It's not that useful, but it is kind of cool. And I will see you in the next section where we will be building a blog. Sweet. So I am really proud of you guys. Pat yourself on the back, take a little break, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Hello everybody, today in this video we will be working with Git, and the best way to work with Git is to have a lot of files generated. And what better way to do that in a Ruby on Rails course than create a Ruby on Rails project. So I'll say Rails new in our terminal, and we'll name the project test for Git. Okay, great, so now Ruby on Rails is generating all these files for us, and you see it's creating an app called test for Git. So I'm going to change directories into test for Git with cd in my terminal. And the first thing is I'm going to list out all the items. So you see these are all of our Rails files. These are all the files that Rails generated for us for our application. So in order to add these all to Git, the first thing is we need to do git init. And you see if we press enter, it says initialize empty Git repository, which means it created a Git repository. Now all we have to do is change the empty part of that statement by adding stuff to our repository. to our project. So I'll say git status, and this will show all the stuff that hasn't been added to our Git repository, which is a lot because it's everything. And in order to do this, I'm going to add something by doing git add and gem file, which is a file listed above. Now if I do git status again, you will see that gem file is no longer there than when we last did git status. Now obviously we're not going to do this with every single file as we go along, and the simpler way is just to do git add dot, which adds all of the files. So you see if we do git status again, it doesn't show any new files that we haven't added yet. Okay, so after that I'm going to clear our terminal, and now we need to commit this. We need to publish what we've added. And in order to do that, what we'll do is we will say git commit -m for message, and then inside of 2 quotation marks we'll name our message, which in this case is going to be initial commit, because all of the first commits, all of the first published things are always initial commit. So sweet guys, that's Git for you, and I will see you in the next video. Alright, so for this Git example in learning Git, I have a sample Rails project open, and I have just done a bunch of crap to this Rails project, and let's say I want to fix it. So this is a problem that you might actually encounter a lot in Ruby on Rails, and the fix is a lot simpler than you might think. So for instance, instead of having to revert back and you don't really know what you might have changed because you changed a lot of files, Git can help us by reverting to the previous commit, by deleting anything that we did except for everything before we committed whatever we committed. And this is why it's good to commit often. So first I'm just going to type in git log, and what git log is going to do is it's going to show me all of my commits and when I committed them and all that stuff. And in order to close out of it, I just press Q, and then I'm back in the terminal. So I'm going to revert back to the commit that says patching up devise sign up. So the commit is right there, and I'll just copy all of those numbers and letters and all that stuff. And then I'll say git reset --hard, and then I would put the name of the commit or the commit ID. So I go up here, and it's going to be that right there. And then I'll paste that in there. And all we do is press enter, and you say head is now that commit patching up devise sign up. And just like that, we have fixed our file. So sweet, I will see you in the next video.